Welcome to another episode of Auto Mundial, a weekly car news and review show where this week we're taking a look at everything from SUVs to supercars.
We have new releases from Cupra and BMW, as well as an in-depth look at one of our favourite EVs.
And to top it all off, we check out the beguiling Ferrari F8 Tributo.
Mercedes' latest supercar, the AMG GT Black Series, has broken the Nürburgring lap record for production road cars. Beating the previous record held by the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ, the track-focused AMG set a time of 6 minutes 48.05 seconds. Piloted by German racing driver Maro Engel, the road-legal GT was set up in its sportiest settings. The carbon splitter was set to its race position, and the adjustable suspension was lowered to further enhance the Venturi effect on the front diffuser. The Black Series is the most hardcore iteration of AMG's bespoke GT, with a turbocharged 720 brake horsepower V8 and lots of GT3 race car inspired aero. On the record-breaking lap of the world's most iconic racetrack, Engel made several adjustments to the 9-stage traction control system to allow him to get the most out of the car. The Mercedes was running the standard Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres that the car comes with from factory, developed specifically for the Black Series.
Since the Volkswagen Group bought SEAT in 1986, the Spanish brand has consistently produced cheaper, stylish versions of VW products. Often available with less equipment to keep the prices down, the gap between SEAT and Volkswagen has been getting narrower for years now. And while SEAT has long built Golf GTI rivaling hot hatchbacks, it's now turning its hand to performance SUVs. This is the new Cupra Formentor, and immediately you'll notice there aren't any SEAT badges. That's because Cupra, the old name for fast SEATs, is now a brand in its own right, with a bronze badging and lots of matte grey paintwork. Following on from its reworked Ateca, the Formentor is the sub-brand's first unique model. Marketed as a coupe SUV, it's longer and lower than an Ateca, with the familiar bronze accents and big wheels. It's a handsome car, as it should be, with a starting price of just under £40,000. For now though, the only powertrain available is a full-fat 306 brake horsepower 2-litre turbo, driving all four wheels via a 7-speed DSG transmission. The result is some impressive performance figures. 0 to 62 miles per hour takes just 4.9 seconds, while top speed is limited to 155. Inside, all trim levels come with digital instruments and a massive 12-inch central touchscreen complete with Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. The angular design of the exterior is continued inside, with more copper-coloured detailing and a lack of physical buttons, with many of the controls being operated via the infotainment screen. Despite its coupe-ish design, the Formentor is practical with decent passenger space and a 420-litre boot. But in this class, cargo space plays second fiddle to snob value.
And if having a car with a premium image is important to you, look no further than this, the BMW X2 M35i. It's slightly smaller than the Formentor and not as good looking, with a somewhat dated cabin, albeit one that's easier to use. It is only £2,000 more than the Cupra though, something that will no doubt win image-conscious buyers. So how about its VW Group stablemates, the Audi SQ2 and the Volkswagen Tiguan R? Well, starting with the Audi, it makes do with slightly less power, 297 bhp, but beats both the BMW and the Cupra to 62 by a tenth of a second. That rapid acceleration is matched by its impressive torque delivery, pulling hard throughout the rev range. However, Its small size and relatively low ride height do make us wonder why you wouldn't just save some money and buy a lighter, faster S3 instead. So what about the Tiguan R? A proper SUV with plenty of space, the Tiguan R uses the same 2-litre motor as the Cupra and the Audi, this time tuned up to 316 brake horsepower. Performance figures are identical to the Cupra's due to its extra bulk, but despite their similarities, this is a very different car. It's a lot more subtle for those who like their fast SUVs to fly under the radar. The interior is much more conventional too, with loads of buttons and hard-wearing plastics.
The Cupra and the VW are our two favourites in this class, but both for different reasons. While their on-paper performance may be identical, the outlandish styling of the Formentor and the more reserved image of the Volkswagen each appeal to different sides of our personalities.
The BMW 3 Series was once the default choice for compact saloons. It was the best to drive, often the best looking, and always desirable. For family buyers, though, the estate faced stiffer competition in a segment where it's practicality that really counts. As a result, Audi A4 Avants and Volvos often stole sales away from BMW. Now, though, there's a new one, so will it finally have the small estate car market all to itself? Well, it's off to a good start. As you'd expect, the 3 Series Touring is just a regular 3 with a bit of extra bodywork. That means an impressive range of engine choices and that traditional rear-wheel drive layout, although the 4x4 X-Drive is still available. Estate cars can often compromise the lines of a saloon, ruining the designer's hard work for the sake of some extra boot space. Not so with the Touring, where previous generations simply extended the window line further along the side of the car. Here the bottom of the glass takes an upward turn behind the back doors, giving the car a feeling of movement and forward motion even when it's sitting still. It's an elegant car, more so than the saloon to our eyes. And although it's no longer than the regular car, the Touring is the biggest 3 Series estate yet, something that should come in handy against the spacious Volvo V60. Luggage capacity sits at a class standard 500 litres, but swells to over 1500 litres with the rear seats folded away, which can be done with the touch of a button. As with the saloon, BMW has put a lot of effort into saving weight for this new model. It gets some aluminium body panels and a lighter drivetrain, making this lighter than the car that it replaces. Inside, the Touring gets the same plush interior as the rest of the range. It still uses the familiar iDrive rotary dial alongside the touchscreen, which makes it easy to use on the move, and there's a vast selection of tech on display, like the intelligent personal assistant, essentially BMW's own version of Alexa or Siri.
But how does it stack up against this, the Volvo V60? Once hovering just below the German cars in terms of prestige, the current V60 offers a real alternative to the crowd favourites. Step inside and you're greeted by a masterclass in minimalism. It looks good on the outside too, with that classic Volvo estate profile of the flat roof and long bonnet. Unlike the BMW, however, the Volvo focuses more on refinement than driving pleasure. It's a serene place in which to while away the miles. It's more practical too, but it doesn't offer the same level of fun you get in the BMW.
The BMW 3 Series Touring then provides no real surprises. It looks good, goes well and gets as much kit as you could possibly want. It may miss out on boot space versus the Volvo, but it's finally an all-rounder and a worthy class leader.
And now it's time for part 1 of our Renault Zoe deep dive. The latest Zoe is a great car for those looking to make the jump to electric power from petrol or diesel. Capable of up to 245 miles on a single charge, range anxiety is a thing of the past.
Now, part Part of the reason for the new Zoe's great range is its 52 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is more than twice the capacity of the Zoe that launched back in 2013. It's also much larger than the battery packs fitted in the Mini Electric and the Honda E, which are rated at just over 30 kilowatt-hours. But Renault is also refreshingly honest about the range figures you can expect in everyday driving, predicting 233 miles in summer and up to 150 miles between top-ups in winter when the cold temperatures affect battery performance. The cheapest trim level is called Play, which still gets a 7-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, LED headlights and keyless entry, but rather ugly 15-inch steel wheels with hubcaps that aren't likely to impress your Instagram followers. Upgrade to iconic trim and stylish 16-inch alloy wheels are fitted, plus the door mirrors are painted instead of a grey plastic, and there are rear parking sensors as well. Or you can choose the range-topping GT line, which is what this is. You get front parking sensors, rear view camera, but the most noticeable change is this very nice 9.3-inch touchscreen, which is the best of any small EV. The graphics are really nice and it's full of information. And the interior itself feels a lot more expensive than the original Zoe. Better design, better materials, and less cheap, shiny black plastic. And all in all, the quality feels quite lovely. Sometimes you forget that you're not in a bigger car. Saying that, the dashboard isn't as daring as the Honda E or as upmarket as the Mini Electric. One concern with smaller EVs is passenger space, because manufacturers tend to cram the batteries under the rear seats. Now, luckily, the Zoe was designed as an electric car from the ground up. So even though these seats do feel a little bit higher than normal, the roof is also 10 centimetres taller than a Clio's. So legroom and headroom are pretty good in this sort of car. The boot is a good shape and size too, with 338 litres of space that's competitive with most petrol cars in its class. It's another reason we think the Zoe is such an easy EV to recommend.
After the break, the latest V8 supercar from Ferrari. Coming up, the Ferrari F8. But first, part 2 of our Renault Zoe deep dive.
How does the Zoe actually drive? Well, you've got two versions, the R110 with 106 brake horsepower, or the R135, which is what this is, with 133 brake horsepower. Whichever one you're choosing, it feels very nippy. The battery motor has got that nice bit of oomph when you put your foot down on the accelerator. So if you want to zip into gaps during traffic, or if, like me, you like to win at traffic lights, then it's absolutely bang on. Now with the gears, you've only got one forward gear, so you're only touching the gear if you want to reverse or park. That's it. Now the extra power of the R135 means that it's a lot more comfortable on the faster roads, on your A roads, on your motorways, but the battery power does dwindle quite noticeably the faster you go. The steering feels nice and natural. It's actually quite a fun car to drive. So this car weighs an extra 400 kilograms more than the Clio. That's because of the heavy battery. And when you're going around sharp corners, you can feel the lean. It's not as fun to drive as the Mini Electric. If you want a small, sporty EV, that's the car that's going to get you closest to an electric hot hatch, if that's the kind of thing that floats your boat. Another advantage of the electric motor under the bonnet is that it's whisper quiet. Around town you can barely hear it, so much so, Renault has added a sound effect called ZE Voice, which plays outside the car to warn pedestrians and cyclists that you're nearby. Of course, at higher speeds the tyre and wind noise takes over and it feels more like a normal but still refined small car. One last feature worth mentioning is the Zoe's B mode, which increases the regenerative braking effect of the electric motor. Now, this means that you can drive the Zoe in town almost entirely with just one pedal. With a bit of practice, it's possible to stop at a junction without touching the brakes at all. So while most manufacturers are launching their first EVs, the Renault Zoe has been going for a decade. And it shows, in a good way. It's improving yearly, continually getting better thanks to customer feedback and data. And the latest overhaul is really impressive. So not only does the latest Zoe double the range of its predecessor, but it's much nicer inside. I think if I had one criticism, it would be that the new Zoe looks very similar to the original. So I would like Renault to be a little bit more adventurous next time, please.
In the past couple of years or so, we've seen more new cars than we expected from Maranello. We've had a new Grand Tourer, the impossibly elegant Roma, designed to take on the best from Aston Martin. Then we've had the ballistic 812 GTS, a convertible version of the aptly named 812 Superfast. And the cherry on the cake was surely the SF90 Stradale, Ferrari's first foray into a series production hybrid with 1,000 horsepower and a near 400,000 price tag. Today though, we're looking at an altogether more conventional Ferrari, the F8 Tributo. And by that, we don't for a second mean this is a dull or uninteresting car. Far from it. But the F8 represents Ferrari's bread and butter. A compact supercar with a V8 engine in the middle, 2 seats at the front, all wrapped up in some glorious carbon fibre bodywork. So then, the F8 Tributo pays tribute to countless mid-engined Berlinettas of the past. Maranello has already announced that it's working on a new V6, so this could well be the last time we see this kind of drivetrain in a Ferrari. The 3.9-litre twin-turbocharged V8 puts out 710 brake horsepower, with drive being sent to the rear wheels via a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox. 0 to 62 is dealt with in just 2.9, while 0 to 124 mph takes just 7.8 seconds, on its way to a top speed of 211. But that incredible speed isn't a result of brute force alone, with the F8 being 10% more aerodynamically efficient than its predecessor, the 488 GTB. It creates more downforce too, with Ferrari resisting the temptation to use vulgar big wings and splitters, instead using clever design to create a truly beautiful and functional shape. It may look quite similar to the 488 in silhouette, and indeed the 458 that came before that. But look closer and this is one of the prettiest Ferraris we've seen in years. A clear evolution of the old cars, yes, but with its slimmer headlights, new pod taillights and 812 inspired rear end, the F8 looks utterly timeless yet completely modern. The interior has been updated too, with a new dash, a touchscreen in front of the passenger and a new smaller steering wheel, albeit one still festooned with buttons and switches. However, while it may be a bit confusing to use, there's one switch that stands out. The Manettino allows you to switch between the various drive modes ranging from wet, which leaves all the driver aids well and truly on, to race, which optimises the car for track driving. For those feeling brave, you can turn everything off to get the full Ferrari experience. The F8 gets some new tech too, most notably the side slip angle control system, which makes it easier than ever to slide the car around.
However, the Ferrari does not have the market to itself. This is the McLaren 720S, and on paper, it's a very close match for the F8. Its 4-litre V8 puts out the same 710 brake horsepower, although it shaves off a tenth of the 0 to 62 time at 2.8 seconds. It also beats the Ferrari's top speed by 1 mph at 212. While it may not quite have the exquisite good looks of the Italian Ferrari, its interior is excellent, a masterclass in minimalism. The layout is much simpler than the Ferraris, with everything falling easily to hand. Like the Ferrari, the McLaren is packed full of go-faster technology. The variable drift control system lets you decide just how much the car will let the back end go, making even the most average of drivers look like a sideways hero. Both of these cars start at just north of £200,000, but be warned, even a quick glance at the options lists can easily add another 100 grand, especially if you want your car decorated with lots of exposed carbon fibre.
Picking between these two really is down to personal preference. They're both spaceships and joyous expressions of what's possible with V8s and turbochargers. Of course, you don't need anything faster for the public road, but McLaren has built a more powerful, lighter version of the 720S called the 765LT, while Ferrari will no doubt bring along a more track-focused F8 in the near future. For now, though, both of these cars represent the pinnacle of internal combustion, something we think should be celebrated while it still can be.
Join us again next week on Auto Mundial as we celebrate some of our favourite new releases from the last 12 months.